inaccurate, and more than 15 million people could have potentially seen those tweets as well. Now, it is worth saying that the total number of tweets coming out of West Africa is tiny if you compare it to the many millions from the US and Europe, but not insignificant. Is social media helping? How else does information, whether it's false or true, get out to people across Africa? Well, we're going to talk more about this because I'm joined by BBC social media producer Andre Messiah and also Caroline Ford, who's the West Africa Regional Director for BBC Media Action. Now, Media Action is a charity which works with radio stations in West Africa, broadcasting, among other things, programmes about Ebola. Well, thanks very much to both of you for coming in. Let's focus, if we can, Andre, first of all, on the information and critically, I suppose, the misinformation. What are these myths that are doing the rounds?
Well, there are a lot of myths going around because of the popularity of social media in Western Africa. Lots of people are getting lots of information, right or wrong information, and there are various myths, including even that poisoned wells is a source of the Ebola virus.
Right, so I've seen some others as well, which salt water or raw onions can protect you. I mean, sort of complete, you know, wives' tale type things that are getting out. And they're getting out how? What's their best method in terms of social media? What do people use most widely?
Well, people have been using Facebook and Twitter, but more and more people have been going on chat apps, such as WhatsApp, to pass on information and to get information as well about what's happening in their area.
Right, and WhatsApp is it's very fast moving, that, isn't it? So you can imagine that sort of wildfire spread effect. Caroline, you focus obviously on social media to an extent, but is that the best engine of communicating across West Africa? Or probably not yet, is it?
Well, we found that you need to use all methods and all avenues that are open to you. So social media is one. We found that radio is still really effective with rural audiences in West Africa. And what we're doing is trying to put people in touch with experts. So rather than people relying on rumor or relying on an anonymous tweet or relying on something that they've heard through a text, rather what we're trying to do is get experts who really do know the medical facts and know what they're talking about to come on radio, and then we ask our audiences to text us what their questions are so that we can put their questions to experts. And it's really important, whether they're getting information from radio or getting information via social media, what's really important is who's the source of this information.
Well, absolutely,
is it someone
who
understands how Ebola is transmitted, or is it someone who's just spreading rumour?
I mean, you're talking about the use of radio, which is far more structured, isn't it? So you can sort of direct it in a better way. Is radio also guilty of myth-making to a certain extent?
It depends on whether or not who's on the radio knows what they're talking about. So what we've been really focusing on is making sure that we get in those who really do understand how Ebola is transmitted, to make sure that people are getting correct information right from the source.
Right. Andre, can you give us some examples of the ways in which social media is working to the good? Because we're sort of picking it as a big bad beast at the moment in terms of spreading misinformation.
Well, yes, there's a number of agencies that have been using social media to get the facts across, such as the Centers for Disease Control. They've been hosting Twitter Q&As, and people have been able to go directly to them via Twitter to ask various questions about Ebola.
And how well are they being picked up? I mean, is that working?
I think so, because, for instance, the CDC Twitter page, they had a certain number of followers, but it's gone over 1.5 million now of people following their tweets and looking to them on Twitter to get the information they need. And
how far can you go, Caroline, in terms of radio information? I mean, could you do wall to wall? If we look at those extraordinary statistics, that more than 55% of the information going out on social media, or Twitter at least, is just inaccurate. I mean, that's a massive tide to have to push back.
It's a huge problem, and what we're learning is that the source of the information, people trust some people more than others, and what we're trying to do is work with traditional leaders and religious leaders so that we can have their voices in local languages on the radio, so that people can really understand that the message is coming from their own leaders as opposed to just from the outside.
It's interesting. I mean, you know, from when I first joined World Service Radio, shortwave radio was massive, of course, and everyone seemed to want to have an access to it. How big is radio as a medium now?
Radio is huge. It's huge. But what's changed is, rather than it being shortwave radio just beaming from London. We're now working with 40 local radio stations all across Sierra Leone. So each local station has its own community. And what we're trying to do is make sure that they all have the same information and the same correct information from a trusted source, so that even though they're coming out through 40 local stations, they're all receiving the correct medical information about how Ebola spread.
A lot of work still to do, clearly. Caroline, Andre, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Well, if you want the latest news on the Ebola outbreak, you can get it on our website, of course. We've got background analysis, including actually how the virus got into the US, for example, and why. It's all at bbc.com/news. OK, let's catch up on the business now. Over to Aaron.
Yeah. I'm still chuckling about when you joined radio. When would that have been, David?
Wireless.
The old wireless.
Wireless is back, of course.
Thanks very much, David. Hello there. Let's talk about this. A new perk for working women, because the tech giants, Facebook and Apple, have confirmed that they will pick up the tab for female employees who want to freeze their eggs.